Thank you. Thanks, Rob. Normally I start off a meeting by saying g'day, comrades, or brothers and sisters, but I think, can you please take it as a term of absolute endearment. I really want to thank you for the invitation to be here. Firstly, to support a bloke who I regard as a mate and one of the finest Australians that I've ever met in Bob Catter. He inspires me. As an Australian, as a trade unionist, people would have said to me 20 years ago, could you have ever been imagined being in Queensland, being a Victorian at a conference with Bob Catter, where they're seeking to make massive political change? You really couldn't have imagined it. You know, but the world has changed a bit, hasn't it? And there is more in common with us now than there ever has been. I mean, the enemy is the people, the multinational companies that think they can throw our farmers off their land, that think that they can treat working people with absolute disrespect, that can rob our kids of a future. And if that doesn't unite us and make us wake up, nothing will. Look, I do not speak on behalf of the ETU in Queensland. They're a different beast. You know, they've come out criticising the government over Queensland, but they're affiliated to the Labor Party, so I can't speak for them. But in Victoria a couple of years ago, we did something unique in the union movement's history. We'd been a long-term affiliated union to the Australian Labor Party, probably over 100 years. And I'd never been a fan, to be honest. I was in it because it was a work requirement. Anyway, we'd had enough of where Labor was headed. So we decided we'd give our rank and file members a vote on whether their union should be affiliated to the Australian Labor Party or not. A little bit of democracy every now and then goes down a long way. The Labor Party did everything to talk us out of it, made every threat under the sun, but I've had plenty of them before, so it didn't really wash too well with me. And the Australian Electrical Commission, so it was beyond reproach, conducted a ballot. Of our members who voted in a voluntary ballot, over 50% voted, 87% voted to become an independent union, not aligned to any political party. And we saw that as being a critically important thing. The members spoke. They didn't see Labor as representing their interests. But having said that, if you go back to this state that founded the ALP back in the 1890s, it was out of unions being formed who won gains, and unions have won great gains: annual leave, sick leave, superannuation, long-service leave, maternity leave, shorter hours, things that have changed this country for the better. But the Labor Party itself is no longer what it used to be. And you wonder what those men and women out of Barcole in the 1890s must think of what we've become now in terms of the Australian Labor Party. How sad it is that they no longer even pretend to represent their interests, yet they're governed by, sadly, unions who affiliate to the ALP, and I've seen it in my lifetime, where the primary driver is getting a safe seat or looking after yourself down the track or getting a job or getting some bullshit little favour for a mate, where their union members' interests are being sold out. So our only primary driver is a union in Victoria when it comes to politics, and we still think politics are incredibly important. We don't walk away from wanting to be involved. And the reason we do it is because it's in our members' best interest to do so. And that ought to be the driver of any trade union on anything you do politically. For God's sake, act in your members' interest, not your own. You know, we wrote a report, we had a report commissioner put a lot of work into it against China free trade agreements. I didn't have to be a rocket scientist to work out free trade agreements weren't doing any Australians any favours. I looked at it from a manufacturing union point of view. I grew up as an electrician. I worked in the manufacturing industry. Used to be Ryco filters. Some of you would know them. We used to make them here. Like everything else, we don't make them anymore. My old factory where I did my apprenticeship is a storage facility for Ryco filters made in China. But I did this report and I went to Canberra and I met Bob. And I said, mate, you know, this is what we feel. We're just so frustrated with it. Liberal Labor, they're trading off our jobs, selling our industry. And then I talked to Bob about it and was able to relate to me firsthand about what's going on the land and what's happening to our farmers and what's happening to our food producers. And it opened my eyes up. And I'm an Australian. I actually really bloody care about that. I care about our farmers' right to have a go. I want them making our food. And Queensland issues, believe me, what you're going through in Queensland in your fight, bloody important to me as an Australian. I don't want to see you... The campaign that this party is leading against the absolute rape of the land on coal seam gas companies is just something you wish the Labor Party had the guts to contemplate doing, because it's the right thing to do, but they won't. So your political struggle and what your party is doing is just so incredibly important beyond Queensland. Please understand the importance of what you're doing is really important for your country, not just your state. And this party, as much as I watch it here, and I'm absolutely congratulate you on the work and effort and the courage you're showing and the candidates for standing and for the rank and filers for getting behind it, Australia needs this, not just Queensland. We need this. We asked what happens after Australia is no longer a quarry. My boys are 16 and 17 years of age. They work part-time jobs. Their kids still at school. And little buggers, I'll try and hold them there a while longer. But they work at a supermarket. I should give it a mention. It's called Lamana Direct. I'm not into plug-in companies, but this one is a big supermarket type of thing. Their policy at that store is that they will not sell one fruit or vegetable not grown by an Australian farmer. Not one. I'm proud my kids work there. I have to drive little buggers all the time and pick them up, as you do, but you love it. My kids are working, so learning the value, earning an honest quid, and they're working for a company I'm proud for them to work for. They declared war on Coles. There's a Coles supermarket across the car park. It's like a ghost town, and I reckon that's bloody terrific. So it's good to see. A little bit of politics in your kids, it's an interesting balance. But, we need to support your party, and when Bob said he was thinking of doing what he was doing and getting this party going, even though in another state, I saw the importance of trying to do what little bit we could to get behind it and support a little bit financially and to stand on the stump. And as Bob said, yes, I've drawn a bit of criticism from those who said that you're breaking faith with the Labor Party tribe. So I didn't break faith with you. You broke faith with me. This very week, Bob Katter has been advocating on behalf of Australian construction workers who are subjected to terrible laws in the Australian Building Construction Commission, a hangover from the Howard government. Who do we turn to get justice for working people? I turn to Bob Katter because I know he believes in it, and I know he'll argue for what's decent and fair for everybody and for my members. And that makes it important that our union recognises that. And I would urge and plead with all Queensland workers, look outside the crap you've been dealt by the Australian Labor Party, who no longer cares about your jobs or your rights, who will sell and privatise your industry and rip your communities apart, that there's a party that stands for better, and that's the Katter's Australian Party. I'm conscious of the time and I want to wind up, but I do want to mention about privatisation and thank you so much for what you're doing to save Queensland from such disaster. In Victoria, we went through the privatisation of electricity. We probably lost 14,000 jobs. Our regional communities in the Latrobe Valley, our primary coal-producing areas, our coal generation areas, were sent into depression for years with job losses. All of our interests were sold off. And the State Electricity Commission, it was in Victoria, has a wonderful, proud history. When probably one of the greatest Australians I've ever known, I didn't know him personally, Sir John Monash, returned from the First World War, a great Australian. He was put in charge of building the State Electricity Commission, and he did it in much the same way as he commanded his troops on the Western Front, with absolute respect for them and preservation of their life. And he built up something whose sole mission was to provide safe, reliable electricity for all Victorians. And that was what that was founded for. And it had a place in our social fabric. It trained our kids. It looked after their communities. It built sporting ovals. It really was a part of our state. And when it was sold off first to the Americans, and then they sold it, and the Americans, their design was run the asset down, sack as many workers as we can, maximise profit for shareholders, sell the thing as a wreck in a few years' time. And that is exactly what they will do in Queensland to your communities. And what is a quick grab for a buck is a total betrayal on every single Queenslander, every one of you. The importance to privatisation, just by way of a point, when they slashed our jobs, they didn't train one apprentice in the whole of our state for 10 years in the power industry, and that's an absolute fact, not one. Because the mission had changed from Monash's vision of safe, reliable electricity for everyone in the state to selling it to a company whose number one lawful object is to maximise return for shareholders. People have got to get that. And the shareholders in Victoria now are the Singapore government investors from Hong Kong. How proud. You know, and you look at our system that has been so poorly maintained and workforce numbers so poorly cut back so severely. The maintenance regime has suffered and we lose 163 Victorian lives in a bushfire that should never have happened. How do you put a price on that? And, you know, sure, where are our parties? You turn to Labor. What do you believe in? Well, it depends what the polls say. What are the Libs saying? What's Abbott doing? What are we doing? You know, where are our values? So the attraction in looking to a party who doesn't need to be guided by the polls for what you believe in is something Australians are just going to have to learn about, because a whole generation of us have come through not even knowing things like that exist. So we've got a lot of work to do in educating Australians, and I want to help you do that the best I can. Australian workers and people on the land have never had more in common in our couple of hundred years of history. The people that are ripping our values apart and throwing farmers off their land, forcing them, invading their land. As a young Australian growing up, I couldn't have imagined a country like this, where workers are sacked and trampled. We've had casualisation of workforce. Never has work been more insecure. And at whose expense? We suffer. Who profits? More multinational companies. And people can say, oh, you're Neanderthal, you're looking in the past. Well, hang on a minute. It takes a bit of guts to stand up against the tide and say it's wrong. You know, and you take hits. Have a look at this fella. You know, he has been vilified, attacked in every single possible way known, but still stands up because it's the right thing to do. That's courage and guts. Your party, you guys standing up takes guts. Every single one of you that put your shoulder to the wheel as a candidate in what is an extremely hard slog. In seats, you're going to give it your best shot for something you believe in. Oh, that's good. And that's something we've got to educate people to understand and to respect. So our interests are so common. You know, if there's a farmer that's on a protest line to defend their land, I want to be on it. I want to encourage every Sparky in Queensland to take an interest, to stand up and do the right thing and help your mates out. At the end of the day, we've got each other, and that's really what should be driving us. I just want to finish on this point, that I've respected Bob enormously for such a long time, that I wish you all such great success. And you know, have a look at the momentum you got going. It's a little bit scary, actually. I think it's awesome. But I'll just finish on this note. Bob Catter makes you proud to be a Queenslander even when you're a Victorian. Thank you very much.